Do you actually think Martin Scorsese is upset about Marvel movies?
Yes. Yes, I do.
Marvel is one of the highest rated film franchises and has been for years, because of their action-packed films and people becoming die-hard fans similar to the famous Harry Potter fans. With the release of Thor: Love and Thunder and all the rage and hype about it, I realized that the MCU might be taking a nosedive and their films are not living up to expectations. But before we get into it, some quick Marvel trivia. What was the most expensive MCU film to shoot? Leave your answer in the comments down below and stick around to the end of the video to find out if your answer was correct. First, let's take a look at Black Widow. Eric Pearson was the writer for this film, the same one for Ragnarok, which we will talk about later. The plot is situated between the events of Captain America Civil War and Avengers Infinity War, but it's also sufficiently self-contained to work for anyone who hasn't been keeping up with the Marvel industrial complex. But why? Why must these films be so out of order? For as many films as they've made, I see how some can be confused and have to be clarified to people, making videos and charts about which movie is which and what happened first. This is one skill the MCU does not have. The attention-grabbing opening sequence starts out like Terrence Malick remembrance of sun-dappled childhood before igniting into a suspenseful escape scene. There's nothing in this plot that the audience can pull from, and I realize not every movie is supposed to be designed that way, but it wouldn't hurt. There have been tons of reviews out there explaining why this specific film doesn't work, with just a few saying Black Widow is a bad movie. The best critique I've ever seen of this movie was someone on here saying it was the sequel to a movie that was never made. Black Widow coming out when it did was super late. If they wanted to do an origin story or whatever for her, they should have done a movie prior to Infinity War at the least. And another saying, Taskmaster just isn't a good character in the film. A movie excels when a film's villain is interesting to the audience. An easy comparison for the film would be The Winter Soldier. Natasha as the lead also just doesn't stick out. Yelena is the better character in the movie. Your lead character, the one you spend the most time with, has to be a great character. The release of this film was June 29, 2021. Just 2 weeks after its release, it was reported that there was a 67% drop in ticket sales. But real quick, make sure you guys check out our Instagram page linked down in the description. There's a ton of interview moments and memes, so make sure you check it out and give us a follow. And of course, we wanted to give a shout out to our Marvel Monday winner. If you guys didn't know, we ask a challenging Marvel related trivia question over on our community tab. You answer it correct and get a chance to get your answer featured here in one of our videos. Phase 3 of the MCU consisted of Civil War, Doctor Strange, Guardians 2, Homecoming, Ragnarok, Black Panther, Infinity War, Ant-Man, Captain Marvel, Endgame, and Far From Home. With any Spider-Man film, most people will be happy, but I truly believe that this phase survived more so than the current phase we are in. The difference between Phase 3 and 4 is the first 3 phases of the MCU focused on introducing the characters that would lead into the Infinity Saga on their quest to stop Thanos from acquiring all the Infinity Stones. After the Avengers teamed up, the MCU reached its peak with Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame, which saw all the characters joining forces to stop Thanos. Since the conclusion of the Infinity Saga, the MCU has continued to twist and turn, with Loki destroying the sacred timeline in his show, Scarlet Witch's chaos magic reaching its full potential, Spider-Man No Way Home cracking open the multiverse ever so slightly, and Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness exploring its border ramifications. Now, The Eternals is a whole nother chapter, with its box office ending its domestic run as the second worst performing movie in Marvel Studios' 14-year history. The problem with this film is there was no originality with the storyline. The film was based on the comic book version of these characters. There was no cameo from other superheroes coming in to help this group, and critic reviews came in hard, with some saying, Eternals is more serious in tone and more deliberate in its pacing than the average Marvel movie, with less of the usual banter and no cameo appearances by other superheroes. But if you're looking for the humanity and originality of these other films, you won't find much of it here. And another saying, it's not exactly boring, there's also something new to behold, but nor is it particularly exciting, and it lacks the breezy wit of Marvel's best movies. One of the strengths of the MCU to date is how it has taken time to define each character individually and lay out the grand narratives of their successive movies, building a sense of momentum. Here, it's all thrown at us at once. These people are saying that there was no real structure or balance within the film, and what I found might be the reason why. Katz Furpo was the head of story and writer for this film. His filmography consists of only 3 films. He was hired by Marvel Studios in 2018 for this specific project, and I don't believe he had enough knowledge of this franchise to be doing such a high-level movie like this that could destroy the MCU's reputation. Audience members even responded to this movie saying, "I am easily entertained and even this disappointed me. Sloppy writing. Terrible movie, too long, and the story was confusing." Then comes Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. There was already high expectations for this film before it came out, as the trailer teased a future Fantastic Four.
We should tell him the truth.
However, some even say that the title didn't make sense when it came to the story that they actually saw. In one of our recent posts over on Instagram, we asked you which of the two disappointed you the most, if at all, and more people geared towards Multiverse of Madness, but why? One person on Reddit posted their thoughts on the film saying, "Okay, finally got to see Multiverse of Madness today and I really enjoyed it, but the movie creates an issue in the What If series. This is another issue with Marvel. Of all the television series and new films they put out, especially recently, it can be very challenging to keep up with not only the timeline but conflicts in other areas where the same world is created. They are milking the franchise and using Disney Plus as a quicker platform to get content out there without doing changes first and making sure everything makes sense. With multiple writers on different projects, it becomes even easier for someone to miss something and not even realize." As for the recent release of Thor: Love and Thunder, this too has been called out for reportedly having the second worst audience score in MCU history, tying it with Thor and Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness as the second worst in MCU history. The rating places Love and Thunder below Ragnarok and The Dark World sitting on par with Thor. Only Eternals has so far received a lower rating. One viewer said, "I saw Thor: Love and Thunder. It can't quite match the visual or comedy bombcast of Ragnarok, but Taika Waititi makes up for it with an emotionally mature Marvel movie. It's also very funny and features one of the most stunning visual sequences in MCU history." With Taika Waititi back in the MCU chair, him experimenting with Thor's character probably wasn't the best idea. I think they are finally starting to realize the mistakes they have made with previous films and trying to experiment with changes of characters and creating more television series and broadening out characters' lives. But they still aren't getting the reaction they want or expecting. It's not necessarily concerning that Love and Thunder couldn't reach the heights of its previous. Ragnarok remains one of the finest additions to the MCU and would have been hard to top under any circumstances. But Love and Thunder's purposelessness is particularly glaring in the wider context of the MCU since Avengers Endgame. The response that Christian Bale is getting is positive, and some even saying his performance was the only part of the film that was worth seeing. The most common complaint about Taika Waititi's recent film is that the pacing is not so great. This isn't too much of a surprise since the movie is one of the shortest MCU films ever at less than 2 hours long. The problem is noticed because, at most times, it feels as if the plot is just rushing from one point to another. The transitions between scenes can be rough, which can also lead to jarring tonal shifts, especially with a project trying to balance both drama and comedy like this one. Christian Bale provides an incredible performance as Gorr, no doubt, but what the character needed was far more time on screen. Howard Stern and Robert Downey Jr. talked a little bit about what Martin Scorsese said about Marvel films. There was also a comment on this video that I wanted to explain, written by Garrett Warwick, saying, "What Martin Scorsese means by not cinema is that the movies hold no real artistic value, so I believe. If you watched Martin's earlier films, like before Taxi Driver even, his work had always been influenced by artist cinema and the avant-garde movement that happened in Europe and then later in America. Big budgeted, entertaining films, in Martin's perspective, do not offer any kind of substance or metaphorical representation beyond what you see on the screen. I think Martin just thinks of these movies as something nice to look at, nothing with any real substance to them." As a writer myself who has studied film over the past 7 years, I know exactly what this means. There's nothing that the audience can relate to. Superhero films are not designed this way. They're action-packed films that focus on entertaining the audience with only that. Thor and Iron Man and Captain Marvel might all be loved by children, yes, but adults who go into this movie realize that there is not real value to the film as far as what the audience can take away from it. No real backstory that the film focuses on. We may get a bit of where the character came from and their hometown, but that's not the sole focus of the film. The remainder of Phase 4 still has Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, Ant-Man: Quantumania, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, The Marvels, and Fantastic Four. I can see Ant-Man gaining some pretty good traction in the box office since the MCU hasn't created multiple different television series and seasons to follow a backstory. But the others are skeptical, but only time will tell. Phase 4 has seen audiences being more critical than ever of Marvel Studios, but there's no telling for sure why that has proven to be the case. For some, the recent projects may legitimately not be in the level of the Infinity Saga, which is understandable after the massive high that came with the end of Phase 3. And for our Marvel trivia question, this one is actually surprising and not as easy as you might have thought. But Avengers Age of Ultron was not only the most expensive MCU film, but the second most expensive film to make, right behind Pirates of the Caribbean on Stranger Tides, and Avengers Endgame just shy of $10 million, funny enough. So what do you guys think of all this? Are you happy with where the MCU is headed, or have you been disappointed the last few films? Let us know what your thoughts are in the comments down below. Make sure you're subscribed with notifications on for more videos like this. That's it for today though. We'll see you all next time with a brand new video.
Were you ever nominated for an Academy Award for Iron Man?
No.
Don't you think that's... And be serious.
Yeah.
Because it's a superhero movie, they turn their nose at... The performance is excellent.
Well,
It is a totally believable character.
Well, I'm so glad you brought this up because there was some talk about it, and I said, let's not